CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 1, Part 16, Audio by Rini Matthew. The sanitary system of the Mesopotamians were not very appealing, and we saw what happened in the cities, how the streets were flooded. These are some examples of what they discovered, the archaeologists discovered from the underground. Look at the remaining sums, the drainage pipes, the plumbing materials that they got from underground, and look at the drainage system in the street. These are some of the pictures from the file photos. Another description is light came into the rooms, not from windows but from the doorways. So because of that, there was some privacy for the families. Light always filled the courtyards and not the rooms. Rooms did not have many windows. And they followed a lot of superstitions. It is the beginning of the world. So definitely they had a lot of superstitions about houses. And that was also recorded in the tablets which was discovered at the site of Ur. There was a town cemetery at Ur, and this is the picture of that. And that was the grave of the royal people. And we saw that ordinary people's bodies, like the skull and everything, was found beneath the house. But there was a separate grave for the royalty. And also even the commoners were found here, maybe the ministers and such kind of people. And as I told you just now, some people were found buried under the floors of ordinary houses also. So how did they know that? It is definitely from the skulls and skeletal remains that they found. A trading town in a pastoral zone. This particular point we saw earlier also, but still it is kept on emphasized because this is something which created disputes. After 2000 BC, the capital of Mari and Uruk were two important cities. This particular capital of Mari flourished. And you will notice that Mari stands not on the southern plain with its highly productive agriculture, but upstream of Euphrates, somewhere in the northern part, the upstream Mari stands. And we saw that people were so smart in harnessing the power of the water and getting the power of the water, where they just diverted it into their own fields and not to the southern parts of the Euphrates river. So that is where Mari was located. And with its color coding shows that agriculture and animal rearing were carried out close to each other in this region. Agriculture and animal rearing, because the place was so fertile and you had so much of water. So definitely you will have the grassland and all the necessary things to feed the animals, and it was very rich in agriculture because of the irrigation facilities. And some of the communities in the kingdom of Mari had both farmers and pastoralists. But most of its territory was used for pasturing sheep and goats. Apart from the farmers, most of it was used for pasturing sheep and goats. Herders, like you have three categories. Herders, people who just look after the sheep and goat. Pastoralists were also there who just fed the sheep and goat. We had the traders also. Now there was a big problem now. The herders always exchanged young animals along with the other materials. They did trade cheese, leather, meat in return for grain, metal tools, etc. And the manure of a penned flock is also of great use to a farmer. So we saw that this particular place of Mari was filled with farmers and pastoralists. So it was the need of the farmer to purchase manure. Manure of the penned flock, or of all these animals and sheep. The waste and everything was very good for the plants as manure. So trading happened between the farmers and the herders. Yet, at the same time, there was conflict also. For example, a shepherd may take his flock to water across his own field. This is what practically happened. When the shepherds take the sheep or the flock to have some water for the sheep, it will, practically ruin the crops. And farmers were so concerned about the crops that they gave so much time to. It is not done intentionally. When the shepherds and the herders take their pastures, take their sheep and goats for pastures, sometimes it is possible that they will ruin the crops. So what happens? Definitely there'll be a lot of conflict between the shepherd and the herders and the traders. Okay, as if they did it deliberately. Herdsmen were mobile, means they used to move from one place to another. And it was very easy for them to raid agricultural villages because they did not belong to that particular place, and it was not very easy to locate them also by the people, that is by the farmers and the pastoralists. So you should understand that the inhabitants of this place was the farmers, and also the inhabitants of the place was the pastoralists. Alright, but herdsmen were moving from one place to another, and it was very easy for them to raid the villages and seize their stored goods because they were very strong and they moved from one place to another. And for their part, settled groups, that is the pastoralists or the farmers, they will always deny the access of this herdsmen to the water, because herdsmen will ask for some water to feed their sheep or their flock, but what will the inhabitants say? No, don't come very close. And they will deny the water, the canal water, along a certain set of paths. That's how conflicts took place. So they may ask you, what was the early form of conflict? Very important. It started with water. Through Mesopotamian history, very important, can you see the herdsmen, how they used to take care of their flock? Nomadic communities, something very familiar or very similar to the herdsmen. Nomadic communities meant the people who just move from one place to another. Normal people were also there, not the herdsmen alone. It was a big community. And that from the western part of the desert filtered into the prosperous agricultural heartland. So when you take a look at the map, from the western part of the desert, this nomadic people became very prosperous, especially in the agricultural heartland. And shepherds would often bring their flocks into the sown area in the summer. Okay, as usual. And such groups initially, they came as herdsmen. How did they come to settle there? Yes, they came as herdsmen, and they used to harvest laborers, or even they hired soldiers because they were very powerful. Occasionally they became prosperous and they will then settle down, because when they saw that the land was so nice and fertile, why should they move from here? They started moving, or they were mobile because they wanted to find a place for the herders, for their pastures. And a few also gained power to establish their own rule. So first they were herders, they used to do trade, then they settled down and they became shepherds, very careful, and then they started ruling over the other because of money or because of wealth more than money, okay? And such people who were transforming from the position of being a shepherd, of being a herdsman, to a settler, to a kind of farmer, included these people, that is, Akkadians, Amorites, Assyrians, Arameans. These four communities were not initially from Mesopotamia. They came as shepherds. Then because of their hard work, because of their prosperity, they took over Akkadians, Amorites, Assyrians, and Arameans. Okay? The kings of Mari were really very, very, very powerful. They were very, very powerful. And they were Amorites also. And their dress was very, very different. It differed from the other inhabitants. And they also respected not only their gods, but other gods of Mesopotamia. And what did they do in the temple? They raised temple at Mari for the particular god, that is the god of the steppe. Mari for Dagan, god of the steppe. So they may ask you, what was the belief of the Amorites? Alright, their dress actually differed and they were very different from the others, and they respected not only all the gods of Mesopotamia, but all the other particular gods, but specifically it was Mari for Dagan, god of the steppe. This is the god. This is the picture of the god. It was put in a previous slide also. And this is how the Amorites dressed. Okay. You can see the culture of the Mesopotamians here in this picture. It is a kind of painting. Mesopotamian society and culture were open to different people. It was a kind of intermixture of many cultures. It is not that there was one particular culture, but everybody was so traditional. Very traditional in actually intermixing with each other. But once they settled down, they had their own kind of racial traditional part also. Okay, so they settled down and then they got used to that particular place. So that is what is being shown here. And when we go further, we can see that they were also open to the kind of mixture and all the kind of people coming in, Amorites, Akkadians, their culture and the way they used to get used to it, everything was like they were very used to such kind of things. When you take a look at all these pictures, you can see that there was a lot of color which was mixed. The way they mixed everything, right? The intrinsic detail which was given to the cloth, the fabric, and even to the mosaic tiles. We saw that in the previous audio, how they gave importance to the color and the way they mixed all these kind of things. Now, we were talking about the palace at Mari. Mari was very famous for the way it was carried and especially about the king, the way he carried about everything. So, the palace remains are still there and this is the king. This is the king of Mari. The king's name is Zimrilim. Okay, he was so particular about beautifying his temples. And look at his courtyard, look at his palace, look at the detail. It is of course given in French, but you can see the courtyard, then the temple palace, then also the terrace, the way it is detailed, then the zone of the sanctuaries. There is another temple within the temple, and this is the temple of the Dagon which we were talking about. Then another temple is also there, Temple de Shamash. Okay, so lot of things were there, and look at the kitchens and the places where these people used to work. The apartment, the royal apartments were there, and such detailing was given, and also the stairs, the way the stairs were designed. And you can see that this is a particular archive which had 15,000 tablets. It was like a library, a small library with lot of tablets, and it was excavated from here also. It may not look very appealing now, but the structure was so magnificent. It was so big. Alright, so this is the palace of King Zimrilim.